This is Spektrum from Djupviks. It's not just a stereo filter. It's a chaotic, clock-eating glitch box that turns audio into rhythm. And it's one of the only switched capacitor filters in Eurorack, but with a twist, you provide the clock. Spektrum is a stereo switched capacitor filter with resonance. Each side processes audio, but also uses that audio to drive the filter itself. It listens to your input signal and makes patterns out of it. The result? Pulsing basslines, rhythmic stutters, and unpredictable textures. So what is a switched capacitor filter? Let's break that down. Most filters shape sound by using resistors and capacitors. A switched capacitor filter does something different. It rapidly switches between different capacitors, and the speed of that switching controls the cutoff frequency. And in Spektrum, unlike other switch filters, the capacitors have different values, making the filter sound different depending on which step you're on. In most designs, this switching is driven by an internal clock, but in Spektrum, the clock comes from your input signal. That's what makes it reactive, glitchy, and alive. And you can hear me here using it in one of my favorite ways, feeding it a drone signal, then mixing in a raw VCO as both audio and clock, and messing around with the VCO pitch. Loads of glitchy fun. Now, fair warning, this is a long video, and so after the walkthrough, please feel free to use the chapters to skip around to different patches. There's tons of interesting sounds to be heard here. Okay, given how different Spektrum is, instead of what I would normally do, which is kind of give you a walk around the features and the inputs and outputs, I'm gonna do that walk around while simultaneously just experimenting, because the joy of Spektrum is really in mucking around with it until you find something that you really like. I was going to use a different word there, but YouTube won't like me for that. Anyway, let's just walk through the inputs on the left-hand side. You've got a clock input, which likes audio rate. You've got the secondary, the middle input here, which acts as both audio source and clock. So if you've got nothing into clock and you've got something into here, that will drive the clock and the audio. And then down on the bottom, you've got just an audio input with volume control input as well. On the right-hand side, you've got that mirrored, so clock input. The only difference on the right-hand side is that this middle input doesn't control the clock. The reason is that the left-hand side is normal to the right-hand side, as you often find in Djupviks modules, so that if you've got a clock in here and nothing in here, it will control both sides in slightly different ways, which we'll get into shortly. Down at the bottom, you've got these switches, which change up the different types of rhythm. Left output, right output, right output, mixed output, and then a gate. The gate output basically takes the clock and an output to gate. I'll show you that later on. But the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to have a look at the inputs by taking a square wave out of the Bristol Bloodhound and showing you into the input. That's into the audio input with the volume. This is into the clock. You can see it controlling the clock, and again it's controlling both the left and right hand side in slightly different ways, which is cool. And then if I put it into the audio and clock, now what we're going to do in this first patch is just use one side of the Spektrum and use it mono out. Then I'll get to doing some fun stereo stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that square wave out. I'm going to go out of the Bristol Bloodhound Mark II into the nod signal because I like the way it sounds. And then I'm going to go into my input. Then I'm going to take another wave. Let's take this wave from the Bloodhound into the clock. So this oscillator's controlling the clock, and this one, this square wave, into nod signal and out, excuse me, is the audio source. Now, what I mean by mess around and find out is precisely that. Spektrum really invites you to mess around with the signals and with the switches until you kind of get a pulsation or a kind of rhythmic stutter that you like. I like this one. Let's play around some more. It's fun. Let's turn the resonance up. You can hear if you pull the filter down, you start to lose the audio, but you get these, just the interesting clock noises. And then when you reintroduce it, you get that resonance. I just pulled the oscillator here down out of audio rate, and so now you get that feeling. You get that sound where you can hear the filter switching between the capacitors, and it kind of sounds like a resonant filter sequence. Just turn the resonance off, and there you can hear it just kind of jumping, but with the resonance up. It's fun stuff. Now you can see this output firing every now and then. Because I've started talking about it, it stopped. There you go, there it is. And so that is kind of firing every time this clock is firing. There you go. So you could use that to control something else. You could use that to control the nod signal, or to control your LFO, or anything really. Right, that's that. Let's now try a stereo patch. Okay, so I've got all sorts patched here. A little bit of the Svalbard PT delay, bit of the Shakti as well, feedback mixer, the nod signal, tape emulation, and the Bloodhound. I won't talk you through the patch because it's fairly experimental. Lots patched into lots. I've got my inputs, I've got my clock inputs. Let's just have a play around. Oh, I like that. Let's pull the resonance down a little bit. introduce the well, that's fun. The excuse me, the Mercer clocked noise signal as one of the clocks here. It gets wild. Kind of excels at these clocked drone sounds. Yeah, sorry, I'm not talking much through this one. I'm just kind of letting you hear it because I think I just have so much fun just mucking around with the inputs to Spektrum and just really kind of getting to grips with how the clock works and how you can create these kind of clocked drone sounds. Okay, let's feed it something a little bit more melodic now. So in this patch, I've got a granular drone. In this case, it's coming from the Torso S4 with a bit of attenuation to get it up to Euro level. Excuse me. And I've got that drone coming in left and right into the middle output, which controls both clock and is the audio in, and then just to the audio in on the right hand side. Then I'm mixing in the digital clock noise from the Mercer, which I think just works really well here. And then I've got just a low drone coming from the Bristol Bloodhound. Let me just remove it so you can hear it. That's it as a sine wave. I think it's best as a pulse. So that's just give it kind of like a root bass note. And Spektrum's acting like a little bit of a mixer here. But then if you start to muck around with the switches, just get this different sound. Turn up the resonance a little bit. Otherwise quite a nice sounding drone, but fairly repeatable. Just going to turn down that noise a little bit. There we go. Has now really come to life thanks to the switched caps in Spektrum. Sound. This patch is going to show off the extreme modulation capabilities you get by pairing Tangram with the Bristol Bloodhound Mark II, and then how Spektrum can slice and dice that to make some really interesting rhythms and glitches. I've got various outputs from the LFO Tangram into Bristol Bloodhound into the wave mult in, the feedback in, etc. And I've also got the VCO modulating itself. This patch loves a bit of effects, so I've just got a little bit of bit crush delay here from Nautilus as well. Just going to play around with this one so you can hear the crazy effects. In this patch, I'm using Just Friends as a polyphonic synth. I wanted to feed some chords into Spektrum as both the audio and the clock. I'm using a little bit of Nautilus as well for a bit of bit depth delay, just to give the sound a bit of padding. Messed around with this patch quite a lot. Let's listen. That's what happened later when the clock got super fast. So there you have it, Spektrum. Another deliciously noisy, chaotic, interesting, different module from Djupviks Electronic. This module in particular pairs really well with the other Djupviks modules that have twin outs or stereo. And so I'm thinking here of Mercer, the Bloodhound, Nod Signal. Much like his other modules, it really rewards patience and exploration. I can't really think of anything to compare it to. All I can recommend is if you like the way some of these patches sound, give it a go. Thanks. See you next time.